Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Benga Adeyemo. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and I'm also a Power BI developer. Today, I'm going to be demoing a very interesting topic, which is row context and filter context. There are two ways that row context can occur in Power BI. Number one is through calculated column. If you create a calculated column in your table, row context is going to occur because it's going to evaluate that calculation on a row by row basis. Now, another way that row context can also occur is when we use what is called iterating functions. I'm going to just give a demo of sum x and average x. Now, in my Power BI file, I already have my tables. I have all my dimension tables here and my fact table. Now, the fact table I have here is sales and I have other dimensions. The calendar table you are seeing here is a calculated table. That is, I created this table with that, with the minimum and the maximum date coming from the sales table. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is to show you my data model to see how all the tables are connected to each other. You see this is a star schema, you see my dimensions here, and you see the fact in the middle. Now, I'll go to my table view. This is where you see my sales table, and you will notice that I only have cost price, selling price, and order quantity. I don't have a column for sales. I don't have a column for total cost. Now, what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to create a calculated column, right? I'm going to multiply the order quantity here by the selling price to get the sales column, which is my new calculated column. So I'm going to click on new column here like this, right? So I'm going to name it sales equals the units selling price multiply by the quantity order column. Then I'm going to press enter. Then a new calculated column called sales is going to be created for me. Now what you will see here is that the calculation is evaluated on a row by row basis. It means that it multiplied for row 1 here, it multiplied the unit selling price for row 1 by the order quantity for row 1 and gave me the results on the same row. So it's evaluating each row one by one and returning the corresponding result or the corresponding values, right? So this is the first example of how row context occurs. It's when we create a calculated column, right? Now, another thing I'm going to do now, I want to get my total sales. So what do I need to do? I need to create a measure. So I go back to my report Canva here. I'll click on my sales table. I'll click on new measure here like this. And I'm going to sum up that calculated column that I just created. I mean the sales calculated column. So I'm going to call it total sales. Total sales. Total sales will be equals to what? The sum of what? The sum of the sales column that we just created in the sales table, and I press enter. Now I'm going to, bring in a card chart to view what my total sales amount is. So I bring in a card chart here on the report canvas. Then I'm going to scroll down a little here and drag in the new measure we just created. And you see that we have 56.25 million for total sales. Now I'm also going to do the same thing for total cost. So I go back to my table here, my sales table here. I create, just click on the sales table and I click on new column and I'll click on new column, right? Now I'm going to say call this total, or let me just call it cost, right? I'll just say the cost is what? Is the unit cost price here multiply by what? The order quantity, right? And I press enter, and the same thing is going to happen again. My calculation is going to evaluate on a row by row basis. You see now, it's giving me the multiplication of the unit cost price here multiplied by the what? By the order quantity. Now, to get my total cost, the same thing I'm going to do, I'm going to also click on the sales table here and I'll click on new measure. Now, when I click on the new measure, right, let me call this now total cost. Total cost now is going to be equals to what? It's going to be equals to the sum of the calculated column that we just created called cost. So you see sales cost, right? Close the brackets and press enter, right? Now I'm going to bring in another car chart, and I'm going to display my total cost value. So this is 23.80. Now note down these numbers because I'm also going to use iterating functions to also bring the same numbers. Now let's now assume in this scenario now that we don't want to create these two columns at all, and we want to get this final aggregate. So what are we going to do? That is where the iterating function comes in. So let me remove or delete these two columns that we just created. I'm going to delete them right away, the sales and the cost. Okay, let me do the second one. Come here, click on delete. Yes. Now I go back to the card chart. What I'm going to see is that it's going to, throw some error. I can click on fix it. Now let me just keep the two of them here like this. Now what I'm going to do is now to use a function called sumx. Now what will sumx, what will it do? Now what sumx will do is that sumx will iterate over each of the row and give me the final aggregate at the end of the day. Now what that means is that it's going to do the same thing that we just did by multiplying the rows one after the other, summing that up, and summing uh, that multiplication up, right? So what I'm going to do is now to go to my sales table here. Oh, I have to delete this one. I have to delete it from the model because the column it's referencing is no more available. So I'll click on delete from model. I'll click on delete from model. Okay, done. So the next thing I'm going to do now, while clicking on the sales table, I'll click on new measure now. Then I'm going to call in my sumx function. Then I can now call this now total sales now, right? Equals what? Equals sumx, right? Now it's asking me for the table name, sales. Now what do I want to do? My expression. My expression is multiplying the unit selling price by what? By the quantity, by the other quantity here. Then I close the brackets and I press enter. So it's going to go to that table and perform a row by row calculation, right? And give me the sum, right? So let's see the magic now. I'm going to drop this new measure inside this card chart. Wow, you see, I got the same number I got the other time. Now I'm going to also apply the same thing. So let me just, instead of me just, let me just copy, right? And I click on new measure again. I click on new measure here. So this one is going to be called total cost, right? It's going to be, so I'm just going to change the unit selling price to the unit, what's it called? That's the unit cost price. Yeah, the unit cost price. And I'm going to commit that. Oh, I have to, sorry, change this to total costs. Sorry about that. Total cost. Then I commit, right? Now I can also drag this here and I will see the same thing. You might be wondering that, wow, this is so good. So I don't need to actually, first create a calculated column and then create another measure that will now sum up that new column that we created. No, you don't need to do that. With sumx, right, it's going to go to the table, multiply all the rows, and sum up and give me the final aggregate. So now you see that now we have these two, the total sales and total cost, right? So row context has happened. So the first example, just to do a recap, the first example says that I will create a calculated column, then it will give me, it will evaluate my calculation on a row by row basis, and then I will now create a new measure that will sum up that calculated column that I created, right? But with the iterating function, I don't need to do that. All I need to do is specify the two columns I'm multiplying together, and it will do that evaluation for me and give me the final sum aggregate, which is very, very interesting. Now let's try something else. Let's assume that we want to do, we want to get the average sales. So what do we do? So we are going to go to sales again, go to new measure here, and I'm going to use average X now this time around, right? I'm going to use average X. So I'm going to say average sales equals to what? The average sales now is equals to what? Average X, right? We're going to use average X, the sales table, comma, then the units selling price multiplied by what? Multiplied by the order quantity, like this. right? So it's going to multiply the unit selling price and the order quantity, and whatever the result is going to sum that up and divide it by the number of rows that I have in that table, right? So I can commit this now. I'll bring in a new car chart. Oh, I already have that. Just let me give this one a dot, right? Okay, so I'm going to bring in a car chart now. I'm going to bring in a car chart, and I'm going to drag in the average sales. So this is the value for the average sales. So I don't need to go to my table here, create a calculated column for sales, and then start creating a new measure again to get the average. Wow, interesting. Now let's move now to filter context. So now let's talk about filter context. Now, what is filter context? Filter context in Power BI is the set of filters that we apply to a given data when evaluating a calculation, right? Now, so filter context or applying filter, right, determines which data is included or which data is excluded in the results. Now, filter context can occur in various ways, in several ways. Let's look at some very common examples. Now, you can apply filter on a visual, right? For example, you have a matrix table and you bring in some, maybe for example, you have product and you have maybe product category and you have sales, right? Now, when you bring in your sales measure to that same matrix table, you bring in a list of all the product category from your product category table. Now, it's going to give you the result for sales or display the result for sales according to the current filter you have in that matrix table. So for example, now if your sales was 6,000, it's going to break down that 6,000 by the different product categories that you have in that table, right? So that is visual level filters. Now we also have page level filters. So a particular report page, a specific report page, for example, you can have filter applied to that page, right? Also, the report level filters. Now, what is report level filters? Report level filters is when you apply filter to all the pages in a Power BI report. That is, maybe you want consistency, in all the pages, that they all ensure consistency in the filters applied to all the report pages, right? So you can apply, what is called a unified filter for all the pages in a Power BI report. Now, when we also use slicers, when we use slicer, right? Slicers also help us to achieve filter context because when we slice by a particular value, we have a list of product category and we are clicking on each of the product category one by one. You'll be seeing that the values or the total sales you have, right? Maybe in your car chart are going to be changing because you are slicing and dicing by different product category, right? Now, cross filtering also happens. In editing, if you go, there's something called edit interactions, right? On your report camera, you can edit your interactions to cross filter. It means that when you click on a particular visual, it will also affect the results coming out from another visual, right? So there are different ways now. Also, even using calculate, for example, which I'm going to show you. What calculate does is that calculate helps you to, it helps you to modify the filter context of the calculation, right? Maybe for example, you have a total sales and you want to, recalculate that total sales to only give for a particular period of time. Maybe for example, you say calculate the total sales, when year is equals to 2022, right? That is also applying filter context. Now let's take a practical example and see what filter context looks like, or let me just say applying filter looks like in Power BI. So back to where we were coming from the other time. So we have our total sales, total cost, and average sales. Now let's assume that we want to apply filter on all these applications. Now let's take a look at slicers. So I can bring in a slicer now from here. I can bring in a slicer here. Maybe for example, I want to see all of these aggregations by, let's say I want to see it by, I want to see it by manager, right? I can just put the manager name here, right? So these are all the managers. And let's say I just click on just one manager. So it means that what the values I'm seeing here is for a manager called Afis Babatunde, total sales, right, for Afis Babatunde, total cost for Afis Babatunde, and the average sales for a fees per person. So I've applied filter on these three aggregations. If I do that for the other managers, that is exactly what is going to happen. It's going to apply filter context on those aggregations, right? Now I clear them. That's the number one. My number one example. I remove. Now I can also apply filter on a particular visual. So let's say it's my total sales now. I can come to the filter pane here and apply filters. So I can bring in the same manager and drop it on these filters here. You see filters on the visual. Now I can pick a particular manager. You see that this is not it's not applying it to the other two charts that I have here, the other two aggregations that I have here. It's only applying it to just this visual. So if I click on fees of Batunde now, you see that it's total sales for this manager. It's applying that filter just on this single visual, this card charts, right? Now I can remove that. Now another interesting thing is that the same manager name I can apply it on I can apply it as a filter on this particular page, right? On this page, right? So I'm going to drag in the same manager name under apply on this page. It means that any chart I have on this page, whether the chart is available now or not, anytime I add a new chart, the result I'm going to be seeing, the data, the aggregation I'm going to be seeing, the figures I'm going to be seeing here, right, is going to be based on the selected filter I have in this filter in these filters on this page, right? So I can click on that manager now. You see that for the three aggregations I have, it has applied that filter there. So let's say I want to bring in another maybe another chart. Maybe I bring in a column chart, for example, and I just expand that, and maybe I want to see total sales now, total sales, okay, and maybe I want to see my total sales by maybe by channel, or don't let me use channel, maybe by zone, right? Right now, the result I'm going to have here is based on. So let me go and switch on my data label. So the result I'm going to be seeing here is based on the apply filter, right? You see that South is showing 11.1 million, right? But if I clear this filter, you see that the numbers are back to what the addition should be, right? Without the filter, right? So that is another example, right? Another example that I also want us to look at is let's say, so let me just uh, drag all of these ones up here. Let me drag all of these ones up here, right? Now, another example I want us to look at is, let's say I have a new page now, and on this my new page, I have some charts here. Let me just put like two charts here. Maybe let me do total sales by what? Let me do total sales by um, I think I have product category here. Okay, product subcategory is also here. So category name. So let me just call it product category, right? Now maybe I bring in another one. Uh, maybe this one is a. Let me just bring in a bar chart. Bring in a bar chart, and I also want to see the same total sales now, or let me just say the total cost. I want to see it by. I want to see it by the different promotions that we have. So promotion type, right? Seasonal discount and no discount. Now the good thing here is that if I have two pages now, right? I can apply filter that is going to uh you know that's going to apply. I can apply filter, right, on all of the pages I have in this report, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring in that same manager, for example, that same manager, and put it under filter on all pages. If I click on the first manager name, the result I'm seeing now is based on this manager's name. It's also going to apply the same thing. You see that this manager name is also here now. Also going to apply it to. So if I have 3, 4, 5, 6 pages, it's going to apply this filter, this manager name filter, based on the selected manager that I'm selecting on the filter, it's going to apply it to all the report pages I have in this report. Now, I also want to show us something, which is the last thing I'm going to show us is when we use calculate. So, for example, now I want to bring in a card chart here like this. I want to bring in a card chart And on that car chart, what I want to just see is that I want to filter my total sales based on a particular value, right? Now I want to apply filter inside my calculation. Now what will help us to achieve that is calculate, right? So let's try that. So I click on my sales, I just click on new measure. I click on new measure. Now in my city table, I have list of all the cities, right, and their city IDs. Now I have a city called Aba. Now I'm going to call this my measure Aba sales, and I'll say Aba sales equals to what? Aba sales equals to what? Calculate, right? I already have my total sales measure, so I don't need to start writing some of whatever again, right? Total sales. Then I'm going to say filter, right? So what is it going to filter? It should filter the city table. Now, the reason why this is possible is because there is a relationship between the city table and the sales table. That is a one-to-many relationship, right? And I can now see the city, this is the city name, right? City equals to what? When it is equals to Aba, right? And I close parentheses 2 times, right? And I commit. Now, what you see here is calculate total sales, measure that we already have, filter the city table. Now, don't forget that the total sales calculation came from the sales table. And I'm using the city table to now filter, right, the information inside the sales table. And the reason why I can do this on the same measure is because there's an active relationship between the two tables. Now, give me, total sales when city is equals to Aba. So whenever I drag and drop my uh, measure on the card chart, what I'm saying here is just total sales for Aba alone. So calculate, helps in modifying. It helps in modifying a filter context, right? So that is that about row context and filter context. I'm still going to create more videos in the future to, re-explain and give more perspective about this particular topic.